So ever since Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 1 came out, I think all of us kind of knew that this show was a disaster and was always going to be a disaster, and that Kevin Smith definitely lied to everyone. We all know the story about Kevin Smith lying on Twitter to the fans multiple times, kind of discrediting Clownfish TV for the reports and the scoops that they got, which turned out to be completely right, by the way. He just kind of discredited them, discredited everyone who was reporting what they were reporting, and he just lied to the fans continuously, as well as all the trailers that came out lied to the fans continuously as well, saying that this was going to be He-Man's show, that it wasn't going to be Teela's show like Clownfish TV was saying. All that BS that he spewed in the lead up to Part 1. Then we all saw Part 1, we all saw that Clownfish TV was right, we all saw that He-Man wasn't the main character, and then Part 2 came out and no one saw the show because we already knew what it was going to be. It's not healthy to continue watching a show that made us, feel that much hatred, that made us feel that much sadness, especially if you're a huge He-Man fan. I myself am not a huge He-Man fan. I'm not a huge fan of the source material. I think it's pretty cool, but I'm not a huge diehard fan of it. But even when I watch Masters of the Universe Revelation, it's just infuriating watching all those events play out that we all saw coming, but we just wanted to believe that it wasn't the case. We wanted to believe Kevin Smith wasn't the same as everyone else in Hollywood, that he wouldn't do those types of things, but it just seemed like he's no different. It just seems like he's the same thing as everyone else. He wants to push the same propaganda, wants to push the same narratives, and now it's going to hurt his career. 100% is going to hurt this new documentary that he's doing, Clerk. It's going to hurt, the next Clerks movie that he's doing. It's definitely going to hurt the rest of his career. I think his career might even be over. Kevin Smith might really struggle to make money in the industry later on. I think he'll definitely get some more stuff to do. Like, he'll definitely get paid to make content just because he's obviously very invested. He's very bought into the Hollywood narratives now, so they know that they can control him. They know that they can get him to do things that they want him to do. So he's going to continue to work. Like this article says right here, He-Man fans turn off Kevin Smith on Netflix. So people were not watching the show at all. Let's look at the Netflix top 10 for November 22nd through 28th. True Story, Cowboy Bebop, Queen of Flow, Selling Sunset, Tiger King 2. I'm not going to read the rest of them because you can see it for yourself. There's no Masters of the Universe Revelation in there. It's not in the top 10. Nobody's watching the show. But by the way, I don't know if you know this, but Netflix can control their top 10. So for Part 1, it was in there for a couple of days, but they booted it out because no one was watching the show. They don't actually put in the top 10 what people are truly watching on there. They put what they want people to watch, like Cowboy Bebop. Who's talking about Cowboy Bebop out there? The only thing that I see about Cowboy Bebop show on Netflix, the live action one, is how bad it is, so no one's watching that. There's no way that it's actually number 2 on Netflix. There's just no way. So they 100% control what shows are in the Netflix top 10. Like I said, for Part 1, it was in the top 10 for a couple of days, but once they realized like the bad press that it was getting, and also the people that just weren't watching the show because they were hearing from other people how bad the show was, they bumped it out of the top 10. This time, Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 2, I don't even think it made it into the top 10. While a lot of fans tuned in for Part 1 as the first part of Masters of the Universe Revelation made it to Netflix top 10, Part 2 didn't make any Netflix's top 10 or trending list for the week of November 22nd through 28th. Netflix released the data for the top 10 TV shows for November 22nd through 28th, where He-Man is nowhere to be found, and worth a mention is that 8 out of the 10 have seen repeat weeks, so the data reveals it's really bad for Smith's He-Man series, which debuted new content, but again, no one tuned in. And if you remember that tweet from Kevin Smith saying that the hate is a lot less for Part 2, he's so happy, he's so proud of the hate being so much less for Part 2 than it was for Part 1. That's because no one is watching the show. I forgot the exact numbers on Rotten Tomatoes, but you can go look it up for yourself. I believe for Part 1, the score was around 39%, maybe 49%, something like that, but it was doctored numbers anyway. But for Part 1, there was 4,000 reviews, somewhere around 4,000 reviews for Part 1 of Masters of the Universe Revelation. And then for Part 2 of MOTU, there's only 500 reviews, and it's around, I think it's a little bit higher. It's around 56% on Rotten Tomatoes, something like that. But people aren't watching the show. 4,000 reviews for Part 1 and only 500 for Part 2. That is all the numbers that you need to see right there. People just are not watching your show. But of course, if you look at the Rotten Tomatoes numbers, it's like 10% higher for Part 2, and people aren't tweeting at him as much. So he's just going to go out there and say, there's so much less hate for Part 2. I'm so proud of this show. I'm so glad that I can make this show that people don't absolutely despise. Well, the reason why you're making a show that people don't despise is because we hated the first part so much, and indifference is even worse than hatred, in my opinion. So people just are so indifferent at this point because it's been a few months since Part 1 dropped. It's been a few months months, and we already know that part 2 is going to suck. So we're just indifferent towards it. We're not even going to watch it. I watched the first couple of episodes of it, and I saw pictures like this, and I was like, you know what? I'm out of here. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not doing this to myself. I'm not going to hate watch your show. That's just bad mental practices. You know, I'm not going to, they have stuff out there that I actually do want to watch, like Arcane and Better Call Saul I'm watching right now. It's actually enjoyable to watch. So why would I hate watch Masters of the Universe Part 2 just because I have a YouTube channel? I'm not going to do that to myself. But I would say most of the people who are watching MOTU Part 2 or MOTU Revelations Part 2 are the people who, one, aren't red pilled yet and don't understand what Kevin Smith is doing by doing stuff like this that you see on the screen right now, or two, they're critics, or three, YouTubers, something like that, where they have to watch it for their job, they have to leave reviews for their job, or they're just not red pilled yet and they're just diehard Kevin Smith fans. They don't actually know what Kevin Smith is trying to do by doing this to the show. But much like Part 1, MOTU Revelation Part 2 is more bait and switch, as Part 2 is all about Evil Lynn and how it isn't her fault that she is evil, but because of how she was treated by Skeletor. So the evil man turned the woman evil. It wasn't the woman's fault, it was the man's fault for turning her evil, of course. An episode even featured Prince Adam denying He-Man by stating something along the lines that he wasn't He-Man, but Adam. What blows my mind is that Netflix producer Ted Biaselli was basically responsible for the series, where it's known the dude is a massive He-Man fan, and he has garages filled with action figures. So you are trying to tell me that this is Biaselli's childhood dream story for He-Man, making it all about Teela and Evil Lynn, transforming them into men in drag and crapping all over He-Man. Now, Kevin Smith, I can almost give a pass to, as Kevin Smith has gone on record stating he isn't a fan of He-Man. That's another really just embarrassing thing by Kevin Smith to do. He is on record multiple times, like this article says, on video, saying that he is not a fan of He-Man, and then whenever he's announced to be doing MOTU Revelations Part 1 and Part 2, he's coming out and saying how big of a He-Man fan he is, how big of a Masters of the Universe fan he is. I was never out there claiming that I was a big fan of He-Man or Masters of the Universe. I don't really care. You know, what I do care about, though, is people ruining these IPs that, you know, a lot of people are big fans of He-Man and MOTU. A lot of people are out there really looking forward to this show, especially after those first couple trailers, first couple TV spots, whatever you want to call them. When we saw clips from the show, it looked like He-Man or Adam was going to be front and center in this show. A lot of people got very excited. There are a lot of diehard He-Man fans out there. There are a lot of diehard Masters of the Universe fans out there, and they got disappointed. They got bait and switch. That's what I care about, because this isn't just about Master of the Universe Revelation. This isn't, you know, it's a very small show in a very big pond that is Hollywood. But this is happening all over Hollywood, and these little battles have to be won. We have to be letting Hollywood know. We have to be letting everyone know that we don't agree with what Kevin Smith did with this. We don't agree not only about what he did in the actual show, because in the actual show, it was absolutely horrible. You know, the show was bad. It was a bait and switch. We all know the story. But also how he dealt with the fans afterwards and before the show was also horrible. You know, he lied multiple times in the lead up to the show. Kevin Smith, like I said, lied to the fans straight up on Twitter, on social media, on YouTube, whatever it is. He lied to us, saying that this was going to be He-Man show, that this wasn't going to be Teela's show, all that stuff. It was all BS. And then afterwards, he went and said, he bragged about how he killed He-Man twice in one show after the show dropped. So he was proud of this. Not only did he bait and switch us and lie to us and stuff like that, but Kevin Smith was proud of the bait and switches that he pulled. He was proud of kind of crushing fans' dreams, crushing these diehard He-Man fans since, you know, the shows came out back in the day. All these people who were really looking forward to this show being a cool He-Man show. He was proud of that. He was proud that he was able to crush those fans' dreams. I truly believe this was kind of like a power trip for him. But let me know what you guys think about this whole situation. What do you think about Kevin Smith once again having meltdowns on Twitter, and also just the show not doing well on Netflix at all? Like I said, Part 1 was actually in the top 10. Part 2 didn't even make it into Netflix's top 10. Let me know what you think about the whole situation. If you did enjoy this video, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to follow me on Twitter, link to that in the description as well. Thank you for watching the video. Hope to see you next one.